So welcome to day 3. I'm going to get started already because it's good to get started on time and to respect those who are here and right on time. And so I just do want to get ourselves going. Excuse me while I'm paying attention to some tech stuff behind here that you can't quite see yet, but that's okay. So let's get started with today's training. Now, first of all, I'm really excited. I'm getting everything geared up as we begin to move on toward our 3-day intensive. It's an implementation intensive. So it's action-oriented, of course, and geared towards helping you build and hone your leadership capacities. Now, leadership capacity this is not just about leadership for top-level organizations, although absolutely it pertains to those folk exactly the same way. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at some new content, some things that have not been out there. And as we move on into the 21st century, as we move on past COVID, well, we're not past it when we won't simply say goodbye to it in our rearview mirror. And it occurred to me the other day that our rearview mirrors really do tell us something. You know how it says in the fine print that those things behind you are closer than they seem. COVID has had a profound impact on the global community, on business, on people's lives, on their health, on their mental health, on so many factors. And all of that doesn't just turn off like a switch just because a vaccine comes in. As we know, the vaccines are out there now, but we're still in the process of getting them literally around the world. So it's pretty clear. COVID has not just gone away. People are not back to normal. People are not going back to the restaurants they were traveling the way they did. So many things have not returned to what we considered normal before. But with change, we have to remember change is always happening. That is one of the things that is very more true than we often think about change. We do like to be stable. We do like comforts, creature comforts. But this is not always something. Having that relationship with change is an interesting one that we have. Human beings are fascinating. We love new things, and we love not to change. We're always fascinated by what is possible. And then oftentimes when we're given that chance to take a step into the new, unknown, we take a breath, we think twice. We sometimes find reasons why it's not such a good idea to do things. So we have this fascinating relationship with change, with innovation, with difference, with ourselves. Our own identity is so much connected to our experiences and our past, and yet we're always still wanting to become something more, something different, to improve ourselves, whether it be physically, mentally, intellectually, in our relationships, in our physical capacities, in so many different ways. So it's just the fascinating reality of human beings. So it's all of this. And as we look at leadership, as we go on into the digital 21st century, increasingly impacted by technology, and even now, the amount of schooling that's gone on, the changes in the way business is done, it also brings up all of the areas of what is the future of work? What is the future of business? What is the future of education? And I don't think it's a matter of either or. Very little in life is a simple matter of either or when you get down to the real nuts and bolts of living it. So it's all about our, how do we operate optimally? How do we lead our own lives? How do we work with our teams? How do we guide those that we work with? Our families are a team. And leadership in this context, and the leadership that I focus on, is that actually the kind of the genuine side of leadership, not the leadership that you get because you're given a position. Now, yes, even when you do have that position, you still have to take those initiatives. You still have to understand what leadership is. You just have a very special vantage point from which to utilize those leadership capacities that you have cultivated and built. None of us were born with great leadership skills. We were born as babes. But it's something that we all learn to varying degrees. Our experiences change us, and we learn from them. What we take away from each of those lessons, well, that's a whole other question, and we're not going to get into that here. But I just wanted to go back into looking at how, as we move into the 21st century, as we move into, and I'm not going to go into that right here, what I call the gray zone, which is that space between how our social institutions and structures are changing at a very slow pace, and the pace of change of of the reality of our day-to-day lives goes at a much faster pace, and that there's that gray zone gap in between, and how to operate in that, where there is uncertainty, where there is volatility. At times, there's just plain volatility in so many people, especially those who lives are literally at stake around the world, or their jobs are at stake, or they're being faced with health crises. There's a profound amount of volatility there, and how to operate optimally in there. This is not about removing those things from your life. I'm not sure anybody can do that, but it is about how we can operate as well as we can, and to continue to improve those capacities so that we can lead well, bring the impact into the world that many of us have a drive to do. When we see the injustices, or we see the gaps between what is and what can be, stepping into that and making a difference. And that can be at so many different levels. But the dynamics of change, the dynamics of leadership, by and large, they have a lot of core commonality. So it's a little bit like saying, okay, you can look at the craziness in the cosmos. You say all of this energy, all of these planets, all of the sun and the light and the radio waves and the waves on the ocean and the weather outside, what do they all have in common? Well, those in the physics realms, and I think about this because that was my background, they were able, like Einstein, to distill this down to very profound, exquisitely elegant formulae that were at play at every level. Now, do you go out and use E equals MC squared in every part of your life? No. But when you really need to get down to the core issues, and then it plays out consistently with those formula at every level through our lives. Understanding those core elements, those core formula, are the things that give us the greatest capacity to operate effectively in almost any area of our life. Now, if we're looking at the peripheral stuff, the tactics and the little tips and tactics, the life hacks and things like that, they can all help and feed in so long as they are aligned and consistent with those core principles. But what we will be doing this weekend is looking at some of those core elements that, when you focus on those and develop those capacities, those leadership capacities, whether you are working in a nonprofit or a social enterprise or a for-profit, in the tech world or in the services or health professions, there are certain things when you look at the human element of leadership and change that are consistent and that are at play all the time. And that's the piece that is often overlooked in our business management systems, in our digital transformation processes as we move into the 21st century. We like our shiny objects, our apps, and our new gadgets. And they are fascinating, and I too love them. So long as we don't forget what is most essential and have the skills, they appear to be the soft skills, but oftentimes they're actually the hard skills to gain and to figure out how to use well. These are the ones that we'll be looking at, and these are the ones that will give you the greatest leverage. Now, part of that, and which is why in this little mini course, we're looking at just a few little skills that are ways to begin for you to pull together some resources for what you will be doing over the next 3 days. Starting tomorrow, as mentioned, the Legendary Leadership Master Plan is starting on the 19th through the 21st, and that's tomorrow. It starts at 8 a.m. Pacific, and that is 11 a.m. Eastern. And I think that's about in Greenwich Mean Time. I think that's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Is that right? Something like that. So toward the end of your day, so you can get a good chunk of that under your belt before you get a good night's rest. Now, at that event, because it really is about engagement and taking action, and you as a leader stepping up and making improvements, honing your own capacities, really want you to be on camera all 3 days. So please make arrangements for anything that you can to clear your schedule, get childcare or whatever you need. Have your husband or your wife bring you meals if you can, or make it easy for you to get them so that you can run away and come back and sit and have your meals in front of the camera. Almost we've kind of shied away from doing that. But didn't you, when you would go to a conference or an international meeting of some kind, didn't you sit with other participants around lunch and talk while you were eating? So we want to be able to make that possible for you to do while you're with us over the next 3 days as well, because so much of the value of coming together in real life, we want to also still make possible, even if it is a little bit virtual, but it doesn't mean that you can't make relationships. Now, as was introduced in the first day, made it clear that senior executives and CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies, when they were asked the key to their success every year, 89% of them said relationships. So the real question is, what do you do about relationships? Is it just happenstance for you? Do you have any clarity about which relationships for your work, for your mission, for your business are good to cultivate? Or is it just happens to be the last person that you managed to speak to, or the person who called you, or the one you happen to have lunch with? What are you doing to intentionally build relationships that, as 89% of very successful executives say, are critical for their success? Wouldn't that make it critical for your success as well? And so that's what we did in the first day. We looked at that. Then I gave you, let me see what I'm going to share my screen with you now, and so that you can just see it a little bit more clearly. And here we go. Oh, I need to make that big enough so that you can actually see it. Let's see if I can make that. Okay, this might be big enough. Share the screen. There we go. So on the first day, I shared with you, or the homework for the first day was to fill out this sheet. And so really it was to, number one, to identify, and I'll just go through it really, really quickly again, but again, so that you've got context. Number one, to identify the issue or the challenge that you really want to focus on and address for this particular time. Any relationship that you want to develop on the business side, or even on the personal side at times, when you've got something critical, you need to be clear about, usually, we have some thought clearly in our head, but for this exercise, it may not be clear that you need to have it clear in your mind to identify the challenge or the issue that you're facing. Next, and then it was to dig back into all of those people in your life that were relevant to you on that topic that you might have forgotten about. So many times we forget about old contacts and connections. So I had you go through in chunks, 10-year, 5-year, or 10-year chunks, to just brainstorm all of those people that you could remember. And the next one was really just to use those who are in your contact list. And they could be on LinkedIn for you. They could be on your Facebook page. They could be anywhere. Those that you have easy access to. And then to add down the bottom in this last segment is, who would your dream contact be for your issue, for what you wrote up here in this one? That was day homework number one. Then what we did, day number two, was to look at how accessible were they and how relevant were they to this particular topic for you. And this is just a way for you to identify who to reach out to first on your specific topic. It gives you a way to take strategic action. Now, this is not, and this process, this mapping, and I came to realize that as I was explaining this process to somebody else yesterday, one of the things that you have to be careful of is that this is not a way, you don't use this mapping as a way to determine whether or not a person is somebody you should relate to. Not at all. This is a way to help you focus when you have something you need to take action on a topic, to help you make strategic choices that give you the best chance of optimizing the limited resources that you do have of time and energy and funding, because relationships take time. And that's often one of the reasons why people don't invest in relationships. But it is so important to allocate time to the building of relationships, which was also why one of the things that I did remind everybody about were let me pull it up, were the capitals that we have, the 6 capitals. And to understand that financial capital is not the only capital that we can develop, cultivate, and utilize. But many times all of these others can be underutilized because we're not paying attention to them, because the focus in the last 20, 25 years, especially in the business realms, especially in the organizational development realms, tends to have come down to being measured. Success is being measured by this bottom line. It is not the only measure of success. So just reminding you of that too. So this is what I asked you to do. Now, what I wanted to introduce you to today is this thought. And this comes from some research in relationship science. And this was done, and this was only made possible because of machine learning. And in other words, I think there were about, it was either 29 or 43, I apologize, I can't remember the number, of studies that fed all of their information. So each of these studies had a range of participants and a range of durations. But what that means is that if you've got 29 studies, this is not just one study, this was a way to utilize artificial intelligence, or rather, a version of that, a subversion of that is machine learning, but essentially using algorithms, computer algorithms to pull out the useful and important information from these 29 studies. And so therefore, each of those 29 studies had so much data and information, data sets that were huge alone. Pulling them all together, this would have been boggled the average human mind, but utilizing machine learning, it could build this out. And the interesting thing was that what happens in the relationship between partners in relationships made the greatest difference in the success of that relationship than even simply the individual, what seems to be compatibilities, or you look at the personality of the other one. Does that work for you? Does that mesh with you? Does it, is that what you want in a partner? And a partner could be in a social relationship or in how you operate with other people. How many times do you get into a team and you look at another person and you say, whoa, I'm not sure that person is somebody that I want to be on a team with. On the other hand, you can have exactly the opposite reaction to other people. Wow, I'd love to have them on that team. That dynamic of what is within, in a sense, what is the individual characteristic, the individual nature of the parties of the relationship. Yes, it plays a part. And I simplified some of these, so you'd have to go back to the anyway, put in the chat box or something like that. Ask me about that, whether or not, or where to find this research, and I'll send it to you. It's still kind of in its raw form. It hasn't been made interesting to the average reader yet, but it's getting there. It's being talked about. This study was only done, this amalgamation of studies, this compiling of studies was only done late last year. I think it came out in this compilation was done by a lady at in her research at Princeton in New Jersey in August of last year, 2020. So do definitely ask me if that's something that I can give you the link to that study. But the point here is that 21% to 45%, the individual character types played a role, compared to 45% what happened between the partner type, the partners. What happened between the partners had much more of an impact on the success of the partnership than the individual components the individuals who were in that partnership. So all that is to say is that we really need to pay attention to what we're doing in our partnerships, in our teams, in our relationships. Even optimal partnerships don't start with anything. You don't start by knowing anything. You don't start by having a relationship. You start by building a relationship. So understanding what it takes to build those relationships, and even which relationships to build, is really important. And I think what I take away from this one personally is that as we look at these, many times in our work relationships, do we choose who are on our teams? Do we choose all of our partners, all of our peers, all of our colleagues? No. Not even the CEOs do. They don't always choose their board members. They don't always choose absolutely everybody. They've got an HR department in the bigger organizations. Maybe when you're a solopreneur and you're just beginning to take on your staff, yes, maybe at that stage you can choose. But by and large, but even then, sometimes who we think we're getting and who we are getting, well, that might be something different because we don't know. You don't learn. So what this is saying is that we can build, when we have that capacity to build solid, good teams, it can make all the more difference to the success than just simply who is on the team. And I've had that. Part of the reason why it jumped out to me like that, in this particular aspect of it, is because there have been a number of teams that I've been, here, take care of these people. These are your team. These are people that you're going to be working with. Okay, who are they? Oh, they have what? They can't even speak English? By me saying that showed me my lack. And in that, right there, I could begin to value the other person and for what they were bringing to the team, a whole new language. So anyway, all of that is to say is that the team that we were able to build, that we built together, that yes, I led that team and we did amazing things. And this, one of the ones that I'm thinking about at the moment, did some amazing work around the United Nations. I won't go into the details of that, but the key point there was what we were able to become as a team. And this is so important for leaders because we don't always choose who we have to work with. And even just understanding that what we build together as a team is more important than the individual components of that team. So what we build together can way outstrip any limiting factors of any of us as individuals. So it creates a phenomenal understanding, proven understanding that what we build together in our teams can be amazing, even when we are not optimal as partners one-on-one, and even more so when our partnerships really can mesh and do well together. So I think that is very exciting. So what I want you to do out of this today, the main point of this today was to begin to, again, to make sure you finish your homework, because doing this, not just looking at is, oh yes, that's an exercise that I might be able to do that could be interesting for me. If you are serious about addressing an issue in your life, addressing an issue in your work, addressing an issue that you're dealing with in your teams, it's critical that you start to do something differently than what you have ever done before to create new outcomes for your team. That just brings up the simple, it's attributed to Einstein. I'm not sure that he was the one who said it, but if you keep doing the same thing, why do you expect to get a different outcome? Or that's the definition of idiocy, or all kinds of other things. It's been used in so many different ways. But the simple point is, why do we sometimes keep doing the same thing and expect different results? Yet this is oftentimes human behavior. When you are ready as a leader to take the step, to be the bold one, to have that courage, to step out and into new territory and lead by example for others, one of the first places to start just by the small steps, such as doing some kind of an inventory of your relationships. And it can give you insight on yourself. It can give you insight on your resources. Because I don't know how many times I've heard from, whether they be, and this is startups, tech world, nonprofits, global level organizations, entrepreneurs, I need more money. Well, yes. And that's something that I can guarantee that just about every person, excepting for maybe the top 1%, for very good reasons most of the time, are always wanting more resources. So we're going to be looking at that more deeply and looking at ways in which we can tap resources, underutilized resources, over the course of the weekend. And doing this simple homework will begin to give you that little bit of an edge on taking those next steps where you can begin to solve that challenge of needing more resources. And they might be, as the capitals indicated, the different kind of capitals indicated. They might be natural, they might be social or relationship capital, it could be intellectual capital, human capital, financial capital, or some kind of manufactured or value-added capital. So please take the time, and I want you to do it in 7 minutes. I don't want you to take long. I just want you to just scribble down every simple name that you can. Number one, identify your core issue that you're addressing, all of those that you've had relationship with in the past that, you know, in your life. And I want you to start, you know, as a child, people you don't normally think of, your childhood relationships, because why not? But not just people that you know, but people that you recall that kind of, when you're thinking about your issue, they're the ones in your life that have some relevance to that issue. They will pop up in your mind. Scribble their names down, and then go in and as I showed you, and I'll just share this screen quickly. As I showed you, make sure that you go on in there and then do with your two axes, one of accessibility, the other one is relevance to the issue and the topic. Then after you've gotten all those names in number one, those you've known, those who are in your Teledex, your Rolodex, your phone, your LinkedIn accounts, your Facebook accounts, your whoever you've got today, because some of the people that you know and have access to really did may not be on your Facebook account. But anyway, so go in and then identify and put each one of those, give them, maybe just sit down with a colored pen and or, you know, or pencil that you're a highlighter, different colored highlight, and just highlight all of them, and then begin to see who you have access to and who are relevant to this. And it just gives you a way to focus in on connecting with some of those people. If this is an important issue to you, if this is something that you want to address, how to do that, what, you know, some other next steps, we'll be dealing with more of that. But I wanted you to begin to start and see the resources that you already have in your own life. So I do encourage you to do that, and then to begin to see that just because anyway, we'll do something very different for the discovery and finding more people relevant to this topic for you. We'll get into that in a very exciting and profound way as we get into the training this weekend. But I definitely wanted you to be able to do that, to get this homework done. So I guess that's really the main thing. Again, I'm just going to close on out by reminding you, please do. Oh, yes. And because we have for the weekend, many of you still have, many of you are registered. Of course, you're registered. That's why you're here. But those of you who don't yet have a VIP ticket or an interactive ticket, I would highly recommend that you do that. Please go in and use this. Go in and go back to, I think you, even if you just go back to your, let me put it in the chat for you, the legendaryleadershiplab.com. That's probably just the easiest way to get back there, to then find, I think even in your emails, there's a link where you can upgrade to the interactive or the VIP. Take a quick look at what you get when you sign up for the VIP. The VIP is just $47 for the whole weekend. And then you get access to a coach, you get access to materials, you get access some other training programs that I've provided in the past. And there's a whole bundle for legendary leadership that you can get access to. It is just so worthwhile you doing that. Plus also it's a way that you are stepping out from being an observer, a spectator, to really stepping up and becoming a leadership and committing to investing in yourself, investing this time, investing even just a small amount in yourself, because you are the key pivot point when it comes to leading your life and determining where you're going to end up in your life. And I know, and what part of what drives me is as I get to know you, I may not know you now, and so I can't say it with full knowledge, but as I get to know you, I am confident that I would be able to, I might end up with more belief in what you can do, because I have reason to believe, to know, to base a lot of what I do on the baseline assumption that you have a lot within you that can be unleashed that you might not be tapping into right now. And that's part of what I really want to work with you on over the course of this legendary leadership training, because I know that you can be legendary in your own life, in your own world. So thank you very much for joining me again. I'm going to close out this mini training. Sorry, I took a few extra minutes, but I hope that you got something and you're able to get yourself really prepared so that you can get a jump start on what we'll be doing tomorrow, starting off tomorrow morning. And I really look forward to seeing you then. With that, I will say ciao. Goodbye.